So we've seen that having a measure of variability is important, but how do we go about actually measuring it? Below, I've displayed the heights from the red team so we can look at how we measure variability. So to get a measure of variability, we could take the difference between the lowest and the highest heights, and this is called the range. And the range is helpful, but it would be a poor indication of the average distance to the mean since we're only looking at the most extreme values. We want to know what the average distance is. Another approach we could take is to subtract each value from the mean and then add them all up and take the average. So if we were to do that, we would see that the negatives and the positives actually cancel each other out and gives us 0. And 0 divided by any number is 0, so that's not going to work. To avoid the problem of the values canceling each other out, we could convert the negative numbers to positives, which would be taking their absolute value, and then taking the average. And in fact, when we do this, this does provide us with an average to the mean called the mean absolute deviation, or MAD. And the mean absolute deviation would work as a measure and is used in statistics, but it's not used nearly as much as the standard deviation and variance. We'll come back to it in future lessons. Another way to get rid of negative values is to square them. So for each value, we would square it or multiply it by itself. Then we'd go through and add up all these square values, then divide by the number, take the average, and this gives us an average squared value of 19, or a square with area of 19. Well, this average square is called the variance, and it represents the average squared distance to the mean. Although it's hard to understand what this average squared distance is, so we need a more intuitive measure. We know that the area of a square is made up of its length times width, and since all sides of a square are the same, the area is just two sides multiplied by each other. So the square root would be just one of these sides. The square root of the variance is the standard deviation, and the standard deviation is the more intuitive measure we're looking for. It shows us the average distance to the mean.